The Minister has been speaking at length to our political editor. Tracy McGee asked Caoimhe Archibald what her message to the Chief Secretary would be.
Well, obviously the executive has only been restored a couple of weeks. There was a financial package put in place by the British government, and as part of that there was a commitment to have a negotiation about the future fiscal framework, so the rules around how we're funded and what spending powers we have. So it will be the start of that engagement. We've also recently had some clarity from the Treasury in respect of the financial package, which we received in a letter from the Chief Secretary to the Treasury on the 13th of February. I had a number of concerns around what was laid out in that letter, particularly around the conditionality that was attached to the financial package, that I wanted to get into detail with the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. And also we are actually still awaiting some clarity on some other elements of the package, and so that's something obviously I want to explore with her as well.
So you're talking about conditionality. This is the request, demand that the Executive raise £113 million, and for that they'll write off a £560 million debt. Now, most people would say that's quite a good deal.
Well, I think it's important, first of all, to say that £560 million worth of debt that they frame it as was actually accrued over the past 2 years because we were being underfunded. The British government itself has recognised that we have been underfunded for a number of years. They have recognised that we have a level of need, and unfortunately, they haven't addressed that going forward. So we have a package in place for the next 2 financial years, but beyond that, we aren't going to be funded to that level of need. It's something which actually the Fiscal Council has come out and supported the view of the Executive and what ministers have been saying in respect of what we essentially face as a cliff edge at the end of 25-26. So that's something that I want to get into with Treasury. I think in relation to the conditionality, it's unfair to suggest that we would on one hand have to come up with a sustainability plan by May, but there are specific conditions that are attached. I also think the time frame around a sustainability plan by May is not achievable. So the Executive is very much up for transforming our public services. We need to be able to invest to do that. We need to take time and space to consider what our priorities are and how we're going to deliver on them. And we need to have that certainty around our future funding so that departments do have the ability to plan and the Executive has the ability to plan about how we're going to deliver public services.
To be clear, is your problem the time frame or the request to raise money?
So it's a little bit of both in terms of the time frame in respect of this year is very unreasonable in my view. We only really have one lever to be able to raise revenue, and that would be the regional rate, and it would be punitive and unfair to put that amount of rates hike on individuals, on households, on businesses for this financial year. So we need to get into the discussion with Treasury about the sustainability plan, about the plan for the Executive to be able to deliver public services in the longer term, and we need to have that certainty. The starting point is that we need to be properly funded. The level of need that we have been that has been recognised needs to be met. In my view, it's untenable to recognise they have a level of need and then not to fund us to that level of need.
But you're not against revenue raising per se. You're willing to discuss that.
So I think the Executive does do revenue raising, so we need to look at how we are going to be able to sustainably fund our public services. So from my view, the starting point for that is that we have to be properly funded in the first place so that departments and ministers are able to plan about how they're going to deliver their public services and how we are going to deliver on our priorities. As an Executive, we will have to take a view as to what our priorities are going to be. We have a very challenging budgetary situation, and we are going to have to prioritise and to make decisions.
So you mentioned rates there. Are you recommending a rates rise this week to the Executive?
Well, we have a very tight time frame within which we need to take a decision around rates to ensure that the rates bills are able to be issued by the beginning of April. So I'm hoping to have a discussion with Executive colleagues later this week around rates. I don't want to preempt what that discussion is going to be or what the outcome is going to be.
I'd heard 4%. as a possible, and that would be in line with inflation?
Well, I don't want to get into figures. I don't think it would be fair to my executive colleagues to not give them their place in terms of having that discussion with them, first of all. I'm not trying to duck the question, Tracy. I'm more than happy to talk about what the rate is once it's been set, but I think I'm not going to preempt the outcome of the discussion with the executive, which I hope we'll have later this week.
So in all likelihood there will be some sort of rates rise. The benefit of that would be you would be able to say to the Treasury that you are prepared to take a bit of pain, and perhaps they would be prepared to move on this 113 million figure.
Well, as I said, I don't want to preempt what the outcome of any discussion with the executive is going to be. I think there is a very difficult balance to strike, because we do want to be able to deliver high quality public services. People rightly expect that they will have access to high quality public services, but we also have to recognise that households, workers, families, businesses are still under pressure from the cost of living. So that's the balance that we're going to have to strike as an executive. We collectively will take a decision around that in terms of setting the rate, and then that will have to be approved by the Assembly as well.
So a bit of good news this week with the prospect potentially of the public sector pay in some sectors being sorted out. But now that's 688 million coming from the financial package from the government. What are you going to do next year?
Well, that is one of the many challenges that we are going to face as an executive. Obviously, there was an amount put on the table by the British government in respect to public sector pay. We were able to get some flexibility to add another 100 million to that pot, and it was really important to me that we were able to go as far as possible in terms of public sector pay, because our public sector workers are who are out there day and daily delivering in our schools, in our hospitals, and across our transport service and in the civil service, and it is important that if we are going to transform public services, that our workers are properly recompensed. Now that is going to be a challenge for the executive going forward.
How are you going to pay for it?
And well, we as an executive are going to have to take a decision around the 2025 budget. That's a piece of work that's already in progress, and we are going to have to consider all of that in terms of public sector pay, but also in terms of the delivery of public services and on what the executive wants to prioritise.
Can I ask you about the audit report? So it has found nearly £2.5 billion more is going to be needed to fund capital projects. Where's that money coming from, and is the Department of Finance going to make up the shortfall? Well,
I think what the Audit Office report highlighted was that it's not unique to here. I suppose that prices have increased. Like, we have seen huge inflationary increases in terms of prices. We have seen supply chain and logistics issues because of the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, the war in the Middle East. All of those things have added to the cost. So that's not unique to here. However, there are clearly issues that need to be addressed. There are clearly issues in terms of the delivery of capital projects. That is going to be a challenge for us in terms of budgetary in terms of the budget. And the head of the civil service has already a cross-departmental working group in place in terms of addressing some of the issues that we face.
But however it came about, Minister, you're the finance minister. The bill's going to land on your desk. So how are you going to pay for it?
So again, we do face a very challenging budgetary situation, not just in terms of delivery of public services, but also the capital projects that we need to do. And there are really important projects that need to be delivered.
Are you going to deliver them all?
The executive will have to put in place its new investment strategy, so that will be a plan to deliver on major capital projects on infrastructure right across the north, and that is something that we are going to have to take time to consider what is going to be within it, and there is going to be a bill attached to it, and there are going to be decisions that have to be made about what is prioritised.
So you can't commit to make up the shortfall, or you are prepared to make up the shortfall but maybe perhaps not for all the projects?
So I think we need to be in that place where we have the investment strategy. We do also need to have that conversation with Treasury around the future fiscal framework, and that's also going to involve capital investment, because there are projects that are really important that need to be delivered,
but that are going to
be important in terms of like how we deliver our infrastructure, how we build homes and roads and all of the things, schools and hospitals, all of those things. The infrastructure that underpins that is really important, and as an executive we're going to have a plan for that, and we're going to collectively have to make decisions around what we're going to prioritise.
Could that mean disappointing some and saying some of these projects can't be built?
Well, there are projects that have been committed to, and those will have to be delivered on, and we do have to collectively make decisions around where we're going to allocate our budget, and that is going to be a challenge for the executive in the next number of months. We are going to have to develop our new investment strategy, and then we're going to have to align budget to that. And obviously with infrastructure projects, those are profiled over years, so we do have to have a plan for how we're going to deliver on those.
Let me ask you about one of those projects, Casement Park. Do you know how much it's going to cost?
Well, I think that the Communities Minister is going back out to market on that. So hopefully we'll get some clarity around the price tag attached to it. I very much welcome the commitment from the Irish Government last week in terms of the funding. We do have to see what the British Government is going to put on the table, because they did make a commitment in respect of that. Obviously, Casement Park is now one of the host stadiums for the Euros, which is a really exciting opportunity, one that we cannot pass up. You know, the huge benefits in terms of the economy, of tourism, but also in terms of sport. Like, for our young people to have that sort of sporting tournament played on their own doorstep, I think is a huge opportunity, one we should be grasping with both hands, and the legacy benefits of that for our young people in terms of sport and getting more people involved in sport is something that we can't pass up.
But there's talk that this could be maybe £100 million more than what had been foreseen. Are you expecting the government to pay all that, or will the executive make up some of that?
Well, I think we need to see what the cost is going to be, and we do need to see what the British government is going to put on the table in respect of it, because they did commit that as part of the Euros that they would be prepared to do that. And again, as I said, it goes back to that conversation that we've had around the Audit Office report, that there have been huge inflationary increase in terms of the cost of delivery of infrastructure projects. So it's not a big surprise that the cost has gone up, but collectively it's an executive flagship project, so collectively we have to ensure that it is delivered on. And as I've said, the prospect of being a host for the Euros 2020 is such a great opportunity that it can't be passed up on.
Last question, how bad would it look if Casement isn't built while there is a Sinn Féin finance minister in place?
Well, I don't think that we should countenance the fact that it's not going to be built. I think it's an executive commitment, and it needs to be delivered on, and collectively we all have to put our shoulder to the wheel to ensure that that happens. There's a lot of partners involved, and it's welcome that we had funding committed from the Irish Government. We need to see what the British Government is going to be prepared to put on the table, and then collectively we have to ensure that it's delivered in the time frame to be able to host the Euros.